Everest today is a dump, a public toilet, a graveyard, and a traffic jam reminiscent of a subway queue. Don't believe it? Let us tell you. But first, subscribe. What awaits you on your way to the summit of Everest? Imagine icy winds piercing through your professional thermal gear and reaching your body. Your vision starts to blur. You suffer from snow blindness, and at most, you see a vague silhouette of the climber ahead. Your lungs feel like they're tearing apart from the cough, so severe it feels like your ribs might crack, a result of oxygen deficiency, despite all the acclimatization stages you went through earlier. The 2 oxygen tanks you're carrying need to be conserved. Otherwise, there's no way back for you. Your legs feel like they're weighed down with iron shackles, and your arms are limp, with every movement requiring monumental effort. Your pulse races madly. Where are you? Ah, yes, this is your personal feat, climbing Everest. Now let's imagine how your triumphant, or maybe not so triumphant, initiation into the club of potential suicides begins. Or, if you're lucky enough to survive unscathed, the club of self-torment enthusiasts. You simply can't wait to reach the roof of the world. First, you assess your financial capabilities, as this journey to the Everest summit will cost you $80,000 to $100,000. Next, you objectively evaluate your mountaineering experience. If you have none, numerous companies can help you gain it over the next 6 months. This also won't come cheap, but what are money and effort compared to achieving your cherished dream? A dream that will make you proud of yourself for the rest of your life. After this, you approach a company that will submit your application to the Nepalese government for a climbing permit. But before you do, you'll undergo a medical examination and, sitting in the comfort of your home, must think carefully one more time. Consider this. In just 1 week, during the spring of 2019, 11 people died attempting to climb Everest. That's nearly double the average annual fatality rate over the previous decade. This number of deaths is attributed to poor weather conditions, inexperienced climbers, overcrowding at the summit, and even growing competition among companies organizing these climbs. But the main reason is simple. The human body is simply not designed for such extreme conditions. As you approach the summit, breathing becomes increasingly difficult, and at around 8,000 meters above sea level, you enter the death zone. Here, the oxygen concentration in the air drops so much that your body literally begins to die, cell by cell. The catastrophic lack of oxygen dramatically increases the risk of stroke or heart attack, dulls your senses, slows your reactions, and hampers your ability to assess situations and make sound decisions. The condition is akin to severe alcohol intoxication, but far more unpleasant and painful. You won't notice at first that breathing has become harder, but you'll start experiencing the first signs of altitude sickness: weakness, nausea, dizziness, and irritability. In the death zone, there is so little oxygen in the air that breathing without special equipment is almost impossible. Tests conducted on climbers at 8,000 meters revealed that their blood oxygen levels were 4 times lower than normal. These are levels doctors usually see in dying patients, explains a British doctor who studied the samples and himself climbed Everest in 2007. To supply enough oxygen to vital organs, the heart works overtime, with pulse rates reaching up to 140 beats per minute. This significantly raises the risk of heart attack or stroke. An American climber once compared ascending to 8,000 meters to an extended run while breathing through a straw. Acclimatization is crucial in mitigating risks. Before heading to conquer Everest, climbers gradually train their bodies to withstand altitude sickness and the extreme conditions of the death zone. Some people give up even at this stage. It's hard to get used to the idea that you're forcing your body to learn how to slowly die. Expeditions to Everest are only for highly experienced climbers and begin from the base camp, already located at an altitude of over 5,000 meters. This is higher than any alpine peak, including Mont Blanc. Official guidelines from Princeton University recommend not starting a hike above 3,000 meters and not ascending more than 300 meters per day, with a 24-hour break every 3 days. Due to the bright sunlight and the surrounding snow, you might suffer from snow blindness, a temporary loss of vision. To compensate for oxygen deprivation, your body starts producing more hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen molecules throughout your body. But this doesn't help much. The blood becomes thicker, increasing the load on your heart, and some people develop fluid buildup in their lungs, a condition known as high-altitude pulmonary edema. Aside from general weakness and fatigue, this condition causes climbers to struggle with breathing at night, with fits of suffocating cough so severe that they can crack ribs. Naturally, continuing the climb becomes out of the question. There isn't enough air even when lying still. In the death zone, the catastrophic lack of oxygen causes brain swelling, leading not only to dizziness and vomiting, but also to severe cognitive impairment. It becomes incredibly difficult to think or make decisions. Your head feels foggy, and your limbs don't obey, feeling as if weighed down by heavy gym weights. Many lose their appetite, and some temporarily lose their vision due to snow blindness. The scariest part is when climbers develop high-altitude psychosis. They lose touch with reality and forget where they are. Hallucinations, both auditory and visual, begin. Exhausted climbers might witness their companions throwing off their clothes into the icy wind or talking to their long-dead relatives. Even those who remain clear-headed face a body that begins to shut down in the death zone. Sleep problems arise. It's hard to fall asleep and just as hard to wake up. Muscle atrophy develops, and climbers rapidly lose weight. Fatigue and impaired vision increase the risk of falling. The inability to think clearly and make sound decisions means a climber might easily lose their way, forget to attach their safety line, or fail to prepare their oxygen reserves in time. Along the route, due to shifting snow and ice, climbers often encounter the bodies of those who perished years ago while chasing success. The mountain seems to reveal these grim findings from beneath its many meters of snow. These remains are impossible to evacuate for proper burial due to the extreme altitude. For many, the sight of these corpses is terrifying and eerie. Those with stronger nerves, particularly guides and instructors, use the bodies as landmarks to navigate the route to the summit. Instructions like this are not uncommon. Take 100 meters to the right from the guy in yellow boots. This is why Everest climbers try to pass through the death zone as quickly as possible. The final push to the summit is usually made in a single day. But waiting in line at the peak, which can take hours, proves fatal for many climbers. Death at a tram stop at over 8,000 meters and other causes. 5 years ago, the Nepalese government issued a record number of climbing permits, 384. This means about 600 people embarked on expeditions to the top of the world, as climbers are accompanied by Sherpas. Here's a photo of the queue on Everest, where hundreds of people crowd at life-critical altitudes for hours. The number of climbers is truly excessive. However, the surge in fatalities on Everest has other causes as well. Many climbers can only arrive at the base camp at the foot of the peak in early May. If, at that time, Nepal's government is preoccupied with a domestic crisis or disaster recovery, their oversight of expedition processes weakens, increasing the likelihood of incidents. Weather in the Nepalese Himalayas can deteriorate rapidly, even in May, the most favorable month for climbing. For example, a cyclone might arrive, forcing authorities to halt ascents for 2 to 3 days. Here's what happened in one recent season. Almost 20 tents in the camp were blown away by strong winds. Several climbers who had already headed to higher camps returned to the Nepalese base camp. The prolonged bad weather delayed the installation of fixed ropes and ladders that help climbers reach the summit. Meanwhile, the number of people at base camp continued to grow. Although Everest can also be climbed from the Chinese side, Chinese authorities issue fewer climbing permits, and many climbers consider the Tibetan route less appealing. By mid-May, the fixed ropes were finally installed, the weather improved, and a brief weather window opened on May 19th to 20th. Only a few groups chose to climb during those days, while the majority decided to wait for the second window, expected from May 22nd to 24th. These later days saw an especially high number of climbers. On May 23rd, over 250 people attempted the ascent. Here's a photo showing the line of climbers waiting their turn to ascend near Everest summit. For those who think of the mountain peak as a desolate, silent place, this sight must have been surprising. Climbers waited for hours in line on the rocky slope near the summit, both on the ascent and descent. By that time, many were already exhausted. Their oxygen tanks were running low. Nepal's climbing regulations require liaison officers to accompany climbers' groups. That stormy spring, 59 officers were appointed, but only 5 stayed with their groups until the final stages. Some officers didn't even show up, and those who did left base camp after a few days. Often, these liaison officers are regular officials with no climbing experience, making it difficult for them to remain at high altitudes. Their services are paid for by the expeditions, and they often simply stay home. One Nepali official believes that if all these liaison officers had been present, it would have been much easier to manage the overcrowding. The officers could have distributed climbing groups more evenly to maximize the May 19th to 20th weather window, reducing the number of climbers during the second window. However, with almost no liaison officers accompanying the groups, managing the crowd was extremely challenging. The absence of liaison officers has been a serious problem on Nepal's side of Everest for many years. Experts also point out that an increasing number of inexperienced climbers are arriving at the base camp. That year, many teams had only one Sherpa guide per climber, though the guidelines recommend at least 3. In dangerous situations, one guide may not be able to assist effectively as they must also ensure their own safety. There's no blame to be placed here. Some climbers who successfully returned to base camp after summiting reported seeing doomed individuals on the slope, their oxygen running out after waiting in line for hours. This new generation of climbers, eager to reach the summit and boast about their achievement back home, often doesn't fully understand the difference between climbing Everest and Mont Blanc. By the time they realize the difference, it's already too late. These people consider themselves independent climbers, but in reality, they don't understand what the term means and lack the experience needed to assess risks, said one expert. Veteran mountaineers have long suggested that the Nepalese authorities introduce specific criteria for issuing climbing permits, including a mandatory requirement of experience climbing peaks over 6,000 meters. But, as we all know, money rules the world, and we shouldn't be surprised by the drive to issue the maximum number of Everest licenses. This is largely driven by intense competition between climbing operators, particularly between established companies and newer entrants. In recent years, many new firms have entered the market, offering lower prices. This forces more experienced operators to reduce their rates. As a result, agencies hire inexperienced people as guides who are not capable of handling such situations, said the vice president of the Nepal National Guides Association. Yet, every year, new adventurers, or simply people who fail to objectively assess their moral and physical limits, join the ranks of those who dream of making history as conquerors of the world's highest mountain. Perhaps their motto is the age-old saying, victory or death.
Did you know that chimpanzees, with their cognitive abilities, can far surpass the mental skills of an entire university course of students? Did you know that elephants, with their extraordinary cognitive skills, can remember the face of a human who wronged them for their entire lives? Did you know that dolphins can recognize themselves in a mirror and even sing mournful songs to grieve the loss of a fellow dolphin? And the honey badger, not typically considered one of the smartest animals, can escape a locked cage faster than a 5-year-old child. Well, let's start building our ranking of the smartest animals. First place. It is shared among chimpanzees, gorillas, baboons, and orangutans. Interestingly, on the Borneo natives' dialect, the word orangutan means forest person, while orangutan translates as debtor. The cognitive abilities of baboons are remarkably similar to those of humans, particularly in their behavior. These primates can recognize stress and cope with it, something not every human can claim to master. Baboons have a complex social system, critical thinking skills, and the ability to collectively solve problems. Additionally, they are natural-born thieves, capable of not only stealing but also planning elaborate heists. Highly intelligent giant apes, known as orangutans, are celebrated for their incredible memory and tool-making skills. They can learn and retain complex techniques, such as crafting umbrellas from leaves to shield themselves from rain or using sticks to extract insects from tree bark. Orangutans demonstrate problem-solving abilities and reasoning skills, which highlight their cognitive prowess. They also communicate using various gestures and vocalizations, and have even been observed interacting with humans through sign language. Powerful giants like gorillas exhibit exceptional skills that likely surpass the knowledge and abilities of our distant human ancestors. They build simple bridges, use sticks to measure water depth, and handle thorny plants by wrapping leaves around their hands like gloves. Gorillas' capacity for abstract thought and cognitive flexibility is evident in their understanding of sign language and their interactions with humans. Their enjoyment of games, empathy, and morning rituals further underscore their richness as both emotional and intellectual beings. Most impressively, researchers are often astonished by the mental capabilities of chimpanzees. When it comes to recalling the placement of objects on a table or the order of numbers on a screen after a fleeting glance, some chimpanzees outperform even math students who have undergone extensive training. Chimpanzees can also craft primitive tools and weapons for hunting other mammals. Second place. This spot belongs to elephants, known for their large neocortex, a part of the brain responsible for higher-order functions. In less developed mammals, this structure is rudimentary, whereas in humans, it constitutes the majority of the brain. The elephant's neocortex is second only in complexity to that of humans, chimpanzees, and dolphins. Like these species, elephants can recognize themselves in mirrors. Elephants have excellent memory. They track the locations of their family members, remember migration routes, and identify water sources along the way. They also know how to conserve water. Before rain, they dig pits and cover them with bark to slow evaporation. Observations suggest that elephants can express emotions, such as crying in distressing situations. For instance, when a calf becomes trapped in mud and the adults cannot rescue it. Elephants also perform mourning rituals. One herd was observed covering the body of a dying female with leaves. They show interest in the skulls and tusks of their kind, even beyond their own family groups. Third place. Here, we can talk about all cetaceans and dolphins, but two species stand out for their extraordinary organization and emotions. Among the 8 most well-known dolphin species, the bottlenose dolphin has the largest brain size. It is also the only species whose cervical vertebrae are not fused, allowing them to nod their heads in a human-like manner. Apart from being easy to train, dolphins can recognize themselves in mirrors, notice unfamiliar marks on their bodies in reflections, recognize images on television, and boast an impressive memory. Bottlenose dolphins have a language specific to their species, but they can switch to a common language to communicate when meeting other dolphin species. Additionally, bottlenose dolphins collaborate with other species, such as humans and false killer whales, for efficient hunting. Now about orcas. These highly developed animals can be described as sophisticated killers of the mammal world. Their hunting techniques are astonishingly strategic, and their social structure is complex and advanced. The coordination and precision of their actions during hunts are remarkable. Orcas are the only animals known to have a grandmother institution. Older females care for their grandchildren in the absence of their mothers, and scientists have proven their significant role in the survival of the young. Orcas are among the most studied mammals. They captivate researchers with their intelligence. For instance, it was recently discovered that different orca families have unique vocal dialects. This charming yet fierce marine creature belongs to the toothed whales and has an exclusively carnivorous diet. Orcas exhibit care for sick or elderly pod members, bringing them food and gently offering it to them. Interestingly, orcas are some of the deepest diving marine mammals, and they also enjoy teaching the young through games in the dark depths of the ocean. Fourth place. The intellectual abilities of corvids are often compared to those of great apes. Ornithologists report that young ravens can solve tests as efficiently as adult chimpanzees. These birds learn quickly, have excellent memory, demonstrate social skills, recognize faces, and distinguish between friends and enemies. They even know how to entertain themselves by playing. Corvids invent clever ways to obtain food. For example,